one of the problems with the migrant crisis, with the number of foreigners we have here, asylum seekers who come here, the worst of them who commit crimes, they end up in jail, and we may want to deport them, because I don't know, they've committed rape or murder or paedophile crimes, violent crimes, drug dealing, whatever. We may want to deport them. In fact, we should deport them, in my view. It goes to court, it goes to these things, these immigration tribunals, and time again, the judges of these courts, they're notorious for it, make the most ridiculous soft touch decisions. The guy we're going to talk about in particular, it's only fair that we point out he is only one of a kind. It's not just him. It's a guy called Hugo Norton Taylor. He has been an immigration judge on the upper tribunal, I think for the past 6 years. He's 52, he got the job when he was 46. He's the son of a Guardian, or a former Guardian journalist, a lifelong anti-Israel type, called Richard Norton Taylor. You know, you can tell which side of the political fence Richard was on or is on. Well, arguably, Hugo, his son, is a chip off the old left-wing bloc. Brilliant piece in the Mail on Sunday chronicling Mr. Norton Taylor's performance at the upper tribunal of the immigration courts by my next guest, Ross Clark. Welcome to the show, Ross.
Good evening, Kevin.
Well, this guy, I remember Hugo Norton Taylor. He first came to my attention and to a lot of our attention when he made this extremely controversial ruling that a family in Gaza who wanted to escape the hell of the Middle East should be allowed to come to Britain under terms that were specifically designed for the victims of war, refugees from Ukraine. Now, both Keir Starmer and David Lammy have both pointed out, no, this is a different deal. But Hugo Norton Taylor decided, no, this family should be allowed to come to Britain. As you pointed out in your article, if this was allowed, it could open the floodgates, because in effect it would say Britain is now taking in all comers from any war-torn region, any war-torn country in the world. It could open the doors to millions of people. So this guy, Hugo Norton Taylor, very dubious decision there, but he's made even more ridiculous decisions. My favourite, which I reported on, I think it was last week, might have been the week before, was that some 16-year-old, a guy from Sudan turned up saying he was 16 years old, and the Home Office and the immigration officials sort of pointed out, well, you say you're 16, but you've got grey hair and it's receding, so we don't think you are 16. So it goes to the lower tribunal court said, well, no, of course he's not 16, he's got grey hair and he's going bald. It goes to the upper tribunal, and Hugo Norton Taylor ruled that this guy was clearly telling the truth, and the reason he looked so old is that the years had been tough on him due to the harrowing nature of his long journey from Sudan. Unbelievable. This is typical of this guy, but he is typical of a lot of these immigration judges. They somehow make decisions about paedophiles, violent crooks, sexual criminals. You can stay because of your human rights, etc., etc. These are decisions that I think put British people at risk. It's quite a worrying syndrome.
Well, it is, and the great tragedy of it is it totally undermines public support for the asylum system, because, there are people who are in genuine need to escape from, injustice and so on, war and justice, so on. But the asylum system relies on public support, like anything else in a democratic society. When you have these sort of cases, they're going to undermine that public support, and you get the kind of protests we've seen in the last couple of weeks. To give another example, There was a case of an Afghan national who came to Britain, claimed asylum. He then raped a woman in Glasgow, was convicted, imprisoned, and when he was released, not unreasonably, the Home Office wanted to deport him back to Afghanistan. And he was granted leave to stay on the basis that, and I'm not making this up, the Taliban might take a dim view of a violent sex offender, um, someone who's committed a violent sex offender in Britain. Well, I didn't knowing the Taliban's approach to women, I think they probably wouldn't actually be all that bothered by what he'd done. But it is absolutely ludicrous that we have this sort of fundamentalist approach, which always favours the criminal rather than public safety in Britain.
Yeah.
Another.
The point is, Ross, he said, oh, the Taliban will take a dim view of this sexual crime that you committed while in Britain. Well, Mr. Norton Taylor might like to know that here in Britain, we take a reasonably dim view of rape as well. I mean, so why should we saddle ourselves with this guy when he should be sent back to his own country?
There is no country in the world which does not take a dim view of violent sex offenders.
Exactly.
And on that basis, no violent sex offender could ever be deported anywhere. I mean, there was another case of Bangladeshi national murdered his wife. And then I think he served about 12 years in jail. And when he was released, he was up for deportation as well. No, he was allowed to stay because it was he would suffer degrading treatment back in Bangladesh. Well, what about the degrading treatment he meted out to his wife by murdering her? No, public safety should be vital element of all these cases, but it just gets left out. It's not just Judge Norton Taylor. There's any number of these cases caused by this sort of fundamentalist approach to human rights, which sort of totally seems to leave out the public element. And what it does, it's giving criminals or giving asylum seekers, migrants, a perverse incentive to commit crimes in this country, because they can then claim that, well, we can't deport us back home because we'll suffer from having
persecution
as criminals. So.
And there was another case you cited is of an Albanian. We don't know quite what his problem was, but he was turned down for asylum. One of those rare people who didn't succeed in their asylum application. So it ended up at the upper Immigration Tribunal under the auspices of Mr. Norton Taylor, Hugo Norton Taylor, and he reversed the decision to deport this guy. Said he could stay because to deport him would be harsh on his stepchildren. So this guy was allowed to stay because there's some kids that he knows that wouldn't like it very much if he was deported. They weren't his own children. Now that is a strange interpretation of our asylum system and our deportation system, that if you know some kids, doesn't have to be yours, who might be upset if you were deported, that's a reason you can stay. That's ludicrous.
Yeah, well, this is the notorious clause in the European Convention on Human Rights, which guarantees the right to a family life. And it's been used by any number of migrants to avoid deportation, among them very many serious criminals.
Paedophiles, a lot of paedophiles.
Yeah, and drug dealers. One was a linchpin of a drug gang. And what, they know full well that if they can hook up with an English woman and either, impregnate her, get a child, or just, move in and with the stepchildren and so on, they can then claim this right to a family life. So, it is utterly ludicrous the way that, their rights are being put above any consideration of the rights of the public.
Yeah. I should stress, Ross, that you know, Hugo Norton Taylor is just one of a kind. He's not responsible for all of these decisions. I've reported myself on I think 2 or 3 cases where paedophiles, asylum seekers, migrants, you know, who commit paedophile crimes, sexually abuse children, you know, they do 3, 4, 5 years, 3 years in jail or something. They come out, are slated for immediate deportation, quite rightly, by the Home Office. They go to a tribunal, one of these tribunals, and every single time they win their case on the basis they've got a right to a family life and that to be deported would be unfair on their own children. To which one might respond, well, what about the other children in Britain? First of all, paedophiles aren't necessarily safe around their own children, but they're certainly not safe around other children. So they're making this decision that this guy can stay, even though he's a paedophile, and even though that puts children in this country in danger. These decisions are not only bizarre and grotesque, they're dangerous.
Mm-hmm. No, it's interesting the way the government has reacted to this this week, because these endless scandals. The government finally reacted and said, well, we're going to deport criminals first, but they are still going to be allowed to, you know, conduct an appeal against their deportation from their home country. So, you know, you might deport a criminal back to Albania, but then they can apply from Albania against their deportation, and if they're successful, then they can come back. What needs to then? Sorry, that is not enough. What needs to happen is that this European Convention on Human Rights needs to be either redrafted or we withdraw from it and we have a British Bill of Rights instead, which states pretty clearly if you are a convicted criminal, being deported is part and parcel of your penalty, your punishment. If you lose an appeal against your conviction, there is no further appeal against deportation. You are automatically gone. Doesn't matter how many children you have in the country, how many goldfish or whatever other perverse reason you might give.
Or whether or not your 10-year-old son likes foreign chicken nuggets.
Yes, chicken nuggets, or whether your home country will take a dim view of it. Just sweep all that aside. No, you get deported back to your home country, and once we've done that, and people can see it operating, a proper legal justice system which punishes criminals by sending them home at the end of their sentences. Till we have that, I'm afraid these cases are going to undermine faith in the asylum system and in our migration system. And that then makes it all the harder for genuine asylum seekers to, be accepted here. It makes it very much more difficult for migration generally to be accepted by the public at large. These cases, and they might only cover a small minority of migrants, but they are absolutely toxic to public opinion, and quite reasonably so.
Well, as I just alluded to, these judges, these are the people, at least one of them, this wasn't Mr. Norton Taylor, but another one did rule that a guy, I think it was an Albanian, who was being deported. I think he was a drug dealer, I seem to remember. And he successfully pleaded against deportation and was granted deportation on the grounds that his 10-year-old son didn't like foreign chicken nuggets. Now, these are the kind of decisions that are being made. Now, we did approach Mr. Norton Taylor, Hugo Norton Taylor, for a response to this. Going to stress again, I'm not just pointing the finger at him. You made that clear in your article as well, but he does seem to be typical of a type of left-wing judge that are presiding over these tribunals. Mr. Norton Taylor did not respond to our requests or our entreaties for a response to him. But what it comes down to, Ross, is this, isn't it? You know, yes, personally, I don't know if you agree, but personally, I think we should leave the European Convention on Human Rights. It seems like a sort of concrete boot around our ankles that is completely destroying our ability to deal with migrants that we don't want, asylum seekers that we don't want. It's destroying our ability to deal with them properly and sensibly, to be honest with you. However, the real problem with the ECHR, since we're saddled with it, is Norton Taylor and his mates, his ilk. It's the way they interpret it. Now, I'm told by my lawyer friends that it's perfectly possible to take the ECHR and say, no, paedophiles are not allowed to stay. No, you can forget about chicken nuggets. It's perfectly possible to interpret the ECHR in a way that could facilitate kind of sensible deportations of undesirables. But these judges choose to interpret it in a very sort of left-wing, anti-British way, I would suggest. Therein lies the big problem.
Yeah, well, put it this way. I mean, do you think that the lawyers and others who drafted the European Convention on Human Rights in 1950 really intended it to protect drug dealers, criminals, murderers, rapists, paedophiles, and prevent them being deported to their home countries? Absolutely not. You know, what is going on now, the judgments which are now being made in the name of this convention are utterly at odds with its original intentions. You know, it was originally intended very high-minded, very worthy, noble idea of, how could we, how could we stop a future Nazi Germany developing it? How could we cut it off in its tracks? And, that is the atmosphere in which the European Convention was written. But over the years, it has gained lots of extra bits. There's something in it called the living instrument doctrine, which, basically is a polite way, a euphemism of saying judges making it up as they go along. And, they can interpret it in sort of ways which might appeal to them, and then it sort of evolves into something very, very different from what it was originally intended to be. Now, I wouldn't, my first preference would not be just to leave the European Convention on Human Rights. There are a lot of other member states of this court which similarly are getting fed up with these kind of judgments, and which have, are calling now for reform. And what we should do is get together with them and make sure this convention is reformed. And if judges put any opposition to that, just drop the whole thing and redraft a new convention which just has the fundamental rights and does not have, does not sort of stray into sort of all kinds of areas which the ECHR now does. And to make it plain that, this document is not there to help criminals, terrorists, and other people who could come to Britain, come to any country and do, citizenry harm. You have to have the right to deport criminals and terrorists. That should be our starting point. If we can't reform the ECHR to allow us to do that, then we should leave. But, I would say have a go at reform first.
We could try that, Ross,
together with those other countries which are
sure. We could try that, Ross. But I do think in the end, ECHR or not, we are going to continue to experience problems as long as we have all of these judges who have this sort of frame of mind that somehow or other they want to favour foreign criminals over the safety of Brits. It's a very strange frame of mind, if you ask me. But yeah, we have a big problem with them. And great article in the Mail on Sunday, and very good to talk to you as always, Ross. Thank you very much for your time.